Hello and welcome to the Culture Changers family. This is an introduction to a series of videos which we're going to be launching on the Culture Changers website over the next few months. But let me first of all introduce myself. My name is Hugh and this is my wife.
Hi, I'm Ginny, and we're really pleased to be able to have this time when we can sort of chat together. We're wanting to share with you some of how Culture Changers started and some of the way that the Lord is just leading us as we go forward together. When the Lord told us to start Culture Changers, we really didn't know what it would mean or what it would involve. And we want to share a little bit about that with you.
In 1986, I felt a call to pastoral ministry, and in 1987, the Lord spoke to us about something about families for Christ. And we didn't really know what that meant. And the plans that we had got worked out didn't seem to come to fruition. And anyway, we ended up in 1987 living in London and part of the Vineyard Church. The Lord had spoken to us through the book of Acts, chapter 9, verse 6, get up and go into the city and you'll be told what to do. And that is exactly what we did. We went up to London and the Lord led us on from that point.
And that was a real adventure for us. We went up with our family, our two children. It was a real upheaval for them, but they were amazingly supportive to us and lived in London for 7 years, learnt masses from John and Eleanor Mumford. It was a huge privilege for us to be there. But we knew the Lord had actually called us to plant a church, and we were released to plant a church in '94, which many of you know is a really good year. And we went down to Winchester, the two of us.
Yes.
And it was amazing because we were meant to be rather old church planters because you were 50 and I was 48. It seems terribly young now, but anyway. And we set off for Winchester and the Lord just sovereignly built that church. It was wonderful. We loved it. And we loved them and they loved us, I think. We were a real family and we learnt to be family together.
We learnt a lot
there. And I think that's where we thought, really, that's part of Families for Christ, just planting a church where it was more a family than an organisation.
Before we left Winchester, sometime in the autumn, we felt the Lord gave us the name. We asked him what he wanted us to do, and he gave us the name Culture Changers. And actually, we thought that's a great name. And we went back to him and said, Lord, do you really want to give that name to a couple of pensioners? Or do you, is there not some thrusting 40-year-old who might pick up the name and run with it?
Yes.
And he said, it's the name I've given you. Yeah. And so we've gone on with it from there. Anyway, at the end of 2011, we handed over the church to new pastors and moved away from the area.
And we hoped we might be able to move from Winchester somewhere like Cornwall. But we said to the Lord, where would you like us to be? And he said, I'd like you to go to the Midlands. Well, we love the Midlands now, but at the time it was far north for us. And so we went up there not knowing anybody, but immediately he began to show us that it was the right place for us to be.
Once we got up to Warwickshire
we just
and
arrived.
Settled in there,
6 weeks.
Ginny talked to me about Culture Changers and what it might involve us in, and I said to her, "I'm not policing anything. Having been an overseer in the vineyard in the area, I thought I don't really want to be taking on everybody else's problems." And her response was, well, you'll just have to buck up and do it anyway.
It's true.
And I said, no, I'm not policing anything.
That's true. And then I felt the Lord immediately speak to me and say, Ginny, he's right. This is a new season. It's a season where you're going to learn a new form of leadership, where people are not controlled, but they're empowered. And I've got a lot to teach you. You've got a lot to learn. So that was a real time of breaking, for me particularly, I think more than you.
And I think probably it was at that point that we realised and understood that Culture Changes is to be a flat network without a hierarchy.
Yes.
We suddenly realised, looking back now, that what the Lord spoke to us over 25 years ago about Families for Christ is really what he wants Culture Changers to be. He wants Culture Changers to be just families.
Yeah.
And families with a passion and a heart sold out for Jesus.
Yeah, and I think, one of the things he's saying to us is he's wanting us to be some of those building his family, reconnecting his family. just before we moved up to Warwickshire, I suddenly had a recurrence of a cancer. We knew he'd told us to come, and so as he hadn't changed his mind, we decided that we would move regardless. But it took everything, all my courage, to be honest with you, to go to a place where, being quite a relational person, we just knew absolutely nobody. But the thing was, he was so faithful to us in the most amazing ways. And about 6 weeks in, one night, we were in bed at 4 o'clock. I woke up and I suddenly felt something on my shoulder. I couldn't think what it was. And I unfolded the sort of fold of my nightdress on my shoulder, and out came a key. It isn't this key, but it's one very like it. This is an Allen key. And it was this size, and I just saw it in my hand. So it was a completely new experience to me. And I thought, well, I mustn't wake Hugh up, because he wouldn't appreciate it at 4 in the morning. But by about 6 o'clock, I thought, I'm jolly well going to wake you up. So I said, look what I found. And he said, well, we don't have a key like this in our house. And we certainly don't have it in our bed. So we were both really amazed, and I should really have gone straight to the Lord, but I just thought I must ring one of the people that's mentoring me. This happens to be Anne Watson, David's widow. But I rang Anne and I said, I've got this key. And she said, what sort is it? So I said, well, it's an Allen key. And she said, well, I think it's not for unlocking things. I think it's for connecting structures. Go to the Lord. So that day we went and said to the Lord, Lord, what are you saying? Why have you given us this? And he said to us, look up keys in the Bible. And the first address that I came to, so to speak, was Isaiah 22:22. Well, a lot of people say, oh yes, but Hugh and I didn't know which verse it was. And we looked at it, and it was amazing, because it was Isaiah 22:22. See, I lay on your shoulder the key to the house of David, and what you open, no one can shut, and what you shut, no one can open. And of course, for me, initially, it was amazing, because I felt it was a promise for life, because I hadn't had a very good prognosis from the hospital. So if it had been on Hugh's shoulder, it would have been wonderful, but I might have thought, how nice for you. Whereas, because it was on my shoulder, we knew it was for both of us. And we then said to the Lord, well, what are you saying about this key? Do you want to pick up from that?
And we felt him say to us, I don't want you to start a movement.
Yeah.
I want you to reconnect my family.
Yeah.
And I think that thing about reconnecting family is really significant. It's what Culture Changes is all about. Yeah. And just to say that, of course, that's having had the Allen key, which is not so much a key for opening things, it is a key for connecting. If you buy IKEA furniture, then you use an Allen key, it connects the pieces together and it tightens them up. And so I believe that is the bottom line, really, of what the Lord has called us to do, to reconnect different parts of his family. And
it was amazing, because it was a supernatural thing, and we know with moves of God the Lord moves supernaturally, and we couldn't argue with it. We were invited by Donald and Annabelle Foray to Washington. We did meet this elderly couple. I think they'd laugh if I say even older than us, but they were in their mid-80s. And I've written a little book called Reconnecting His Family. And in the book, I just put about 2 lines about the key. But they had been given this book, and while we were there, they rang us and said, would we come and see them? And we arrived, and they just said, look, we need to tell you that 10 years ago, the Lord told us to buy a set of Allen keys and to hold on to them, and one day he would show us who to give the keys to. And they rang up and said, in the night, the Lord said, those Allen keys, you're to give them to that couple that have come over from England, Hugh and Ginny Cryer. And so they said, here you are. And this is the set of keys, which I'm trying to make look rather good. But anyway, that is the set of Allen keys. I don't travel with the supernatural one. We keep that at home. But this is the set of keys. And when I put them in my hand, I felt the Lord say, Culture Changes is part of something bigger. And that was the best news for us, wasn't it? Absolutely marvellous, because we didn't want to be doing anything on our own and feeling incredibly, just aware that only God could do this, because we're aware of our limitations. When I first got this key, and I was talking to Anne Watson about this, one of the books she sent me was a thing called The Out of Church Christians. I thought, well, I don't want to read that. And we felt the Lord saying, I want you to read it. I want you to know that I'm going to show you that at the Win-Vin, you did not approve of people who were not in mainstream established church, of which the Lord would say the Vineyard was one. And it's perfectly true. When people used to come to the Winchester Vineyard, we would ask what church they were in if they were wanting to prophesy or share something. And if they would say they're in a local church or a Baptist church, Catholic church, couldn't matter to us, any established church, we would say, you're so welcome, because we wanted to be really open to what the Lord was saying through his body. But if they would say, well, we're not actually in a church at the moment, Hugh and I would say, well, you know, why not? And get into one and come back. Because that was our attitude. And the Lord really began to challenge that and say, you have called people rebellious that I have called out because they can no longer stay in the church, local church that they're in, because basically they're either bored stiff or they've moved on. And this was terribly difficult for us because we didn't believe that. And he began to show us that apart from the established church, there is an organic church alive and well, and that he wanted us to learn more about that. When the Lord started to talk to us about those who are outside what one might call church, which is the established church, Hugh and I began to then that we felt the Lord saying that we were to leave the Vineyard movement, because how can we reconnect his family if we are part of a particular part of the body of Christ? And so we did that, and we didn't sort of go to the established church for about 3 years. We found it incredibly difficult. We kept feeling terribly guilty to begin with that we weren't there. But then on the other hand, all these amazing things were happening. We realised that, of course, we are the church. And we began to look at what the organic church, we like to call the classic church, really was, which was the New Testament church. Before Constantine came in, before tradition came in, before many things that we have taken as sacrosanct came in. And we're suddenly realising that those traditions weren't sacrosanct, and the Lord wanted us to get back to little families. As we began to meet in our home and realise that the Lord was showing us a different expression of church, we began to have such a love for it, but also have such a love for the established church. And the Lord reminded us in Matthew 9:17 about the old and the new wineskin, that the old must be preserved and for us is very precious, but the new is where the Lord is taking us. And moving into a new season, seeing things in a new way, coming together as followers of Jesus, united together, the established church and the organic church. So when the Lord said to us, I want you to reconnect my family, rather than build a movement, Hugh and I suddenly began to realise that it isn't so much connecting or being part of connecting Anglicans and Catholics and Revival Alliance streams and all that sort of thing, but it's the established and the organic church together. That is what he's wanting to bring together as his family is reconnected, as the body of Christ is reconnected in preparation for the return of the King.